October 6, 2002. Richwoods, Missouri. It was a quiet fall afternoon in Richwoods, Missouri. 11-year-old Shawn Hornbeck rode his bike, never returning home. His parents searched frantically, but no trace was found. Days turned into months. Years passed with no answers, until an unexpected break. 4 years later, a routine investigation led police to a small apartment. What they discovered inside would shock the entire nation. It was a sunny Sunday on October 6, 2002, when 11-year-old Shawn Hornbeck left his home to go for a bike ride in Richwoods, Missouri. He pedaled along the dirt roads near his house, something he did regularly. The rural area was peaceful, surrounded by forests and scattered properties where children still played freely. But that afternoon, Shawn didn't return for dinner. His parents, Craig and Pam, grew more panicked with each passing minute of his absence. When Shawn's bike was found abandoned on the side of the road, fear turned into desperation. There were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses. The bike appeared to have simply been left there, as if the boy had vanished into thin air. His mother, Pam, ran along the road screaming her son's name, but the silence of the forest was overwhelming. The family's anguish had already begun, and one of the most remarkable abduction cases in American history was unfolding. Authorities were quickly alerted. Local police, firefighters, and volunteers mobilized immediate search efforts across the area. Helicopters flew over the woods, search dogs were brought in, and roadblocks were set up on nearby highways. But no solid leads emerged during those critical first hours. Shawn had disappeared without a trace. The news quickly made local and statewide headlines. The entire Richwoods community joined the search, walking through rough terrain, combing every inch. But as night fell, the initial hope was replaced by a haunting sense of helplessness. What had started as a simple bike ride had now become a dark mystery, and time was already working against Shawn's fate. In the days following the disappearance, the search efforts intensified even further. Volunteers from neighboring towns came to help, and the FBI joined the investigation. Authorities worked tirelessly, expanding the search radius to cover dozens of miles. Every possible lead was thoroughly investigated, but the void remained. Interviews with neighbors, friends, and family members revealed no suspicious behavior leading up to Shawn's disappearance. There were no family issues, arguments, or signs of a voluntary runaway. Shawn was a happy, sociable boy with a strong bond with his parents. The theory of an abduction became increasingly likely. But the mystery lay in the complete absence of witnesses. Authorities began investigating registered sex offenders in the area. Multiple individuals were interrogated, homes were searched, and vehicles were inspected. But none of the suspects had any concrete connection to the case. The investigation seemed to be going in circles. The Hornbeck family's pain grew with each day that passed without answers. Public vigils were held almost daily. Posters with Shawn's face were distributed across the United States. Programs like America's Most Wanted and Larry King Live helped bring national attention to the case. Pam and Craig Hornbeck made emotional pleas on television. Yet even with widespread coverage, Shawn's whereabouts remained a complete mystery. Police stations received hundreds of calls reporting possible sightings, but none of the information was ever confirmed. With every false hope, the parents' suffering deepened. The Shawn Hornbeck case was beginning to grow cold, while his abductors maintained complete silence. For 4 long years, no solid leads would emerge. The man responsible for Shawn's disappearance was Michael Devlin, a 36-year-old pizza shop employee who lived in Kirkwood, Missouri. Devlin had no serious criminal record, which made it difficult for investigators to identify him during the early years of the investigation. He led an apparently normal life, living alone in a small apartment. But behind this facade, he hid a deeply disturbed and predatory mind. His coldness and deceit allowed him to function in society while keeping Shawn under his control. On that fateful day in 2002, Devlin intercepted Shawn on a rural road. Armed with a gun, he forced the boy into his vehicle. With no witnesses, he quickly left the area and drove nearly an hour to his residence. There, Shawn's captivity would begin, a captivity that would last an unthinkable 4 years. Throughout that time, Devlin managed to keep his victim hidden in plain sight. Inside the small apartment, Devlin imposed a regime of psychological control and constant physical abuse. He threatened Shawn, telling him he would kill his parents if he ever tried to escape. Over time, the abductor began allowing Shawn to accompany him outside on occasion, always under close supervision. The victim was even seen in public several times without raising suspicion. The psychological trauma and constant fear paralyzed Shawn, preventing him from seeking help. As the years passed, Devlin began incorporating Shawn into his daily routine. The boy was given a new name, Shawn Devlin, and was even registered for some public activities. But behind the appearance of normalcy, the psychological terror continued relentlessly. Shawn became a shadow of himself, trapped in a world of fear and manipulation. His young mind fought daily between the desire to escape and the terror of Devlin's threats. During this period, the Hornbeck case was occasionally revisited by journalists and authorities. But with no new leads, investigators were left reviewing old case files. Though devastated, Shawn's parents never gave up hope that their son would one day be found. They never stopped fighting to keep the search for their missing boy alive, and finally, after 4 long years, fate would take an unexpected turn. On January 8, 2007, 4 years and 3 months after Shawn's disappearance, Michael Devlin made a fatal mistake. He abducted a new victim, 13-year-old Ben Ownby, in the town of Beaufort, Missouri. Ben was approached as he got off the school bus and was forced into Devlin's vehicle. Unlike with Shawn, this time there was an eyewitness, a teenage neighbor who saw a white van speeding away from the scene. That single detail would change the entire course of the investigation. The young witness provided police with a precise description of the van used in Ben's abduction. Authorities immediately launched a search for the vehicle. Within days, investigators located a van matching the exact description in the city of Kirkwood. It was registered to Michael Devlin, a pizza shop employee who had never previously raised any suspicions. With the vehicle identified, police prepared to move in. As they investigated Devlin, officers discovered he had no solid alibi for the time of Ben's disappearance. They decided to confront him directly, without initially revealing the full extent of their suspicions. During the interrogation, Devlin became visibly nervous and contradicted himself multiple times. Under pressure, he eventually broke, confessing not only to Ben's abduction, but also revealing something even more shocking. He admitted to being the kidnapper of Shawn Hornbeck. The shock was immediate. After 4 long years of fruitless searching, Shawn was finally about to be found. Authorities rushed to Devlin's apartment in Kirkwood, where they discovered both boys alive. Shawn, now 15 years old, was visibly shaken but physically healthy. Ben was rescued after only 4 days in captivity. News of the rescue spread rapidly across the country. Within hours, the story was on newspaper front pages and major television networks. Images of Shawn's reunion with his parents moved millions of Americans. The impossible had happened. The missing boy had survived 4 years under the control of a predator and was finally free. The case would forever be etched into American criminal history. When authorities informed Pam and Craig Hornbeck that their son had been found alive, the shock was indescribable. For 4 long years, they had held on to hope through pain and uncertainty. Now, they were receiving the news that so many parents of missing children dream of, but rarely ever experience. Shawn was finally coming home to his family. The reunion was about to take place. The moment Pam and Craig embraced Shawn was captured on television and broadcast to the world. The tears, nervous smiles, and collective relief became one of the most emotional images of the decade. Shawn, though visibly withdrawn and shy, remained close to his parents throughout. The reunion was filled with a mixture of joy and profound emotional shock. No words could truly capture the intensity of that moment. In the first days after the rescue, the family chose to maintain as much privacy as possible. Child trauma specialists were brought in to help Shawn readjust to family and social life. The challenge was not just physical, but primarily psychological and emotional. After years of constant threats, the teenager needed to learn how to trust the world again. The family, in turn, began a careful process of rebuilding their lives. The media partially respected the family's wishes, but public interest remained enormous. Interviews, documentaries, and special reports were produced to tell Shawn's extraordinary survival story. Psychologists, criminologists, and abduction experts analyzed the case for months. All highlighted the remarkable mental strength the boy had shown to endure years of abuse without completely breaking. Shawn Hornbeck's name became a symbol of resilience. At the same time, the Hornbecks used the media attention to create a foundation to help other families of missing children. The Shawn Hornbeck Foundation began providing logistical and emotional support for similar cases. What began as a tragedy was transformed into a source of hope for hundreds of families. Pam and Craig became nationally respected figures in the fight for child abduction victims. Shawn's story would go on to inspire thousands of people around the world. With Michael Devlin's arrest, the macabre details of his behavior began to emerge. Throughout the 4 years of captivity, he subjected Shawn to severe physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. Constant death threats against both Shawn and his family created an atmosphere of absolute terror in the boy's mind. Devlin built a system of manipulation, alternating violence with small gestures of false normalcy, keeping Shawn emotionally imprisoned. It was a cruel cycle of domination and fear. Inside Devlin's apartment, authorities found pornographic material, Shawn's belongings, and physical evidence of the abduction. The collected evidence left no doubt about the extent of the abuse committed. In addition, Devlin confessed that he had been planning to abduct more victims, making his arrest even more critical. The level of planning and control he maintained for years shocked even the most experienced investigators. To many, Devlin represented the worst kind of predator. During interrogations, Devlin revealed disturbing details about the first day of the abduction. He had initially planned to murder Shawn shortly after kidnapping him, but ultimately changed his mind. From that point on, he developed a pattern of abuse and manipulation that continued for years. The change in his modus operandi puzzled criminologists, as child abductors rarely keep their victims alive for such extended periods. The case even challenged traditional criminal profiles for offenses of this nature. The judicial system moved quickly to prosecute Devlin, given the severity and public outrage surrounding the case. In October 2007, he pleaded guilty to multiple counts of kidnapping, sexual assault, and attempted murder. He was sentenced to 74 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Michael Devlin would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Justice had finally caught up with the kidnapper. While the legal closure brought some relief to the Hornbeck family, the trauma remained a lasting wound. For Shawn, the battle was now daily, rebuilding his life, regaining trust, and overcoming years of violence. but his survival and courage became a powerful lesson in resilience. Against all odds, he had returned home, and his story was only just beginning to be told. After his rescue, Shawn began a long therapeutic process to deal with the deep psychological scars left by his captivity. Child trauma specialists worked carefully with him to rebuild his self-esteem and help him re-establish a healthy routine. The adjustment was not easy. The teenager had to confront painful memories and slowly regain trust in the outside world. The constant, loving presence of his family was essential throughout this journey. The unconditional support of his parents allowed Shawn to slowly begin rebuilding his identity. Little by little, Shawn resumed normal activities. He returned to school, made new friends, and started rebuilding his social life. The local community showed exemplary support, avoiding excessive exposure and respecting his pace of readjustment. Shawn also resumed hobbies and sports he once enjoyed, like cycling, a symbol tied to the day of his abduction. Every small victory was celebrated as an important step toward healing. Despite the trauma, he demonstrated remarkable strength in his recovery. The media continued to follow Shawn's progress discreetly in the years that followed. Controlled interviews allowed his story to be shared without excessive exposure. Shawn unintentionally became a beacon of hope for other victims of abduction and abuse. His story was told in books, documentaries, and educational lectures on child safety. He transformed his pain into a tool for awareness and resilience. The Hornbeck family, in turn, expanded the reach of their foundation. The organization assisted dozens of families across the United States in dealing with similar disappearances and traumas. Pam and Craig became respected voices in advocacy efforts and public policy on child protection. Shawn's name, once synonymous with tragedy, now represented resilience and hope. The family built a transformative legacy out of their experience. Despite his progress, Shawn has never downplayed the emotional challenges he continues to face. In adult interviews, he has acknowledged that the scars remain, but they do not define who he is. He chose not to be seen forever as a victim, but as someone who survived and rebuilt his life. His journey of overcoming serves as a powerful example for trauma survivors around the world. Shawn Hornbeck's story is, above all, a story of strength. Today, 2 decades after the beginning of his ordeal, Shawn Hornbeck lives a quiet life, far from the spotlight that once surrounded his story. His case continues to be studied in criminology, psychology, and law programs across the country. Shawn's abduction and rescue have become a reference point for improving search and investigation protocols for missing children. His journey inspired real changes in how authorities handle long-term abduction cases. Shawn's name carries not only pain, but also profound lessons. The case also strengthened the national conversation about the psychological impact on long-term abduction victims. Experts emphasize the importance of ongoing support, strong family networks, and long-term therapeutic care. Shawn's story brought visibility to issues that had previously received little public attention. He has become a symbol of emotional resilience in the face of extreme trauma. His survival continues to move and educate people everywhere. The foundation created by his parents remains active, helping new generations of families face the nightmare of child abduction. The Hornbeck family's work continues to be celebrated as an example of solidarity and rebuilding. Their pain, transformed into action, has saved countless children from similar situations. What began as a personal tragedy has become a national mission of support and prevention. The Hornbeck legacy remains strong and necessary. Michael Devlin's name remains locked in the darkest pages of American criminal history. Imprisoned for multiple crimes, he will never again have the chance to repeat his monstrous acts. Life in prison without parole ensures that his threat is gone forever. Justice came late, but it was absolute, and above all, the monster lost. Shawn Hornbeck didn't just survive, he triumphed. He broke the cycle of fear, rebuilt his life, and inspired millions with his quiet courage. His name will forever be remembered as one of the most extraordinary survivors in American history. The boy who vanished for 4 years returned not only alive, but with remarkable strength. And his story will continue to light the way for those still fighting for justice. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next cases.